Hey guys, it's Carlos, your favorite Airbnb community leader from Edmonton, Alberta. I'm just here with the legendary Chad, who is probably one of the greatest Airbnb hosts that's literally popped on the scene over the last couple of years. Chad, thank you for coming. What are you doing here?
Just giving you some advice on what you're doing. You're doing a legal basement suite, specifically made for short-term rentals. So I've done a few, and I thought it'd be great to brainstorm, share some of my ideas, and it's an awesome way to utilize the slow season.
Yeah, so a lot of you Airbnb hosts are probably, if this is your first year, you're experiencing slow season, which sucks in Edmonton. January, February are always the worst. Usually all the money you make at Christmas time, gone in January, February. So right now, I've decided rather than crying repeatedly like I do most years, I'm going to instead come here and I'm going to renovate this basement suite. So this suite is actually something that I've owned for 7 years. I used to live in here. It was an ugly suite, but this is my first time actually doing a full renovation for Airbnb. Typically the houses that I've been buying are either pretty much done or they were already suited houses and there was only minor things I could do. So right now here with Chad, can you give us your top 3 tips for someone who's kind of getting into doing renovation before you even start ripping things off the wall? What 3 things do you look for to help decide what kind of renovations you're going to do?
Yeah, I would say the number one is, and this is going to save you a ton of money, is utilizing the existing infrastructure. And what I mean by that is looking where your plumbing is, your rough-ins are. If you have to break concrete, it could get really expensive. Just understanding where those components are and then basing your whole design of the space around where those components are, because that'll save you a lot of money if you're able to utilize the existing things that you have. Number 2 is just probably after that's done is just understanding the layout. We were just marking out where the beds are going to go and how the rooms are going to be laid out. Understanding how you're going to actually furnish the space is very different than just slapping some wood on the walls and not giving it much thought if the bed's going to fit in a room. Another thing that we were talking about is getting all the rough-in complete, where you want all the switches, light fixtures. If you want to do some a cool feature wall or something, try to plan those things out in advance, and especially with the rough-in. While all the drywall's off the walls like this, makes it a lot easier to run a wire rather than be I really wish there was a light fixture here, and then you have to go back and cut drywall or have an ugly cord hanging out somewhere. So those are a few things.
In this particular space, it's kind of funny when Chad was talking about having problems that you don't typically have when you're planning out room design. So originally this room was going to be a sacrifice room.
Sacrifice to your glory.
Sacrifice rooms are rooms where you give up having the perfect look in exchange for having more beds. I usually have one sacrifice room in every single Airbnb I have, so that way I can increase the occupancy, because more heads and beds means more money. So I was planning on having a queen bed here and a queen bed here. However, I literally just realized that I'm going to put a closet in this space right here. The problem is you wouldn't be able to access the closet if you had a queen bed here.
We all fail. We all make mistakes.
So going back and forth, we looked at different options of how we would lay out the space, how we could move the closet somewhere else. And at the end of the day, there was no good way to do it. And so we ultimately decided that instead of going with 2 queen beds, I'm just going to go with 1 big king bed in this kind of area right here. And instead, using the extra wall space I have to make it a dedicated workspace. Thanks to Chad for thinking about that one. Another little trick, and this is something that I learned from my mentor, Sean, Rocky G. Look him up, he's awesome, he's a stud. Don't tell him I said that. But is doing a makeup stand area, makeup mirror. The typical Hollywood lights where it has all the lights in the perimeter around the mirror. That's something that's really hot and it looks really amazing in photos, especially if you're trying to get wedding bookings and things like that that are the really high value bookings.
Yeah, another good thing that you didn't mention is by having a closet, you're probably going to get a higher value for your appraisal. As looking at as a real estate investment, you're going to be able to get more value of this actually being a legal bedroom because he already has the window here. And that's another really good thing to look at when you're doing these projects, is if you have to extend the rough opening and cut concrete on a window to make it a legal bedroom, it could be expensive. So try to utilize the windows you already have.
A lot of times people default to having to open up windows.
Just do it!
Oftentimes you just have to change your window design. Go from something that has a sliding panel to something that swings open. There are a ton of ways to avoid having to cut into concrete, but it's better to cut into the concrete while it's bare like this than to have your final inspection fail, because once you put the new windows in, the inspector says it's not egress.
Yeah, and another genius thing that I actually learned from our beautiful friend Wes is you could get ones with hinges, and they open right up, like, so you could have the smallest size window, but it could still meet the egress requirements without having to cut the concrete by having the hinges on the one side. So if you're working with a window manufacturer, have a good guy, then you're able to make it happen without cutting the concrete.
Yeah. Cutting concrete's no fun. We're going to have to cut concrete on one of these walls. So we're going to do a couple quick tips just for when you're doing your initial roughing and things to think about when you're starting out. So you'll make notice in here that we have hot water tanks sitting by themselves. Well, that's actually because I had a couple years ago, my furnaces die on me in January at -40. The best time. So what we actually ended up doing is we moved the furnaces all the way down there to be out of the center of the suite. So because we did that, we now have room for a bathroom in the center of the unit, which is perfect. We didn't have to frame out and do a whole bunch of stuff to put in new plumbing and things like that. It was very minimal amount of concrete that had to get broken up. So that's something that you think about when those kind of situations happen, is planning for the future. And that saved me a ton of money in doing this renovation. Another thing, though, thankfully, is because I chose to have good, solid contractors who are experienced.
You got the Ryobi. Yeah, they're good, man. For the price point, they're great. Like, working with these is just fantastic.
Yeah, no,
yeah. No, they're awesome.
Is they told me that I should have a cold air return in every single bedroom. That's not something you normally think about. I've honestly never do. So I talked with them. We set it up so that way the cold air returns would be in a place that wouldn't affect the decor lookout of the room. Last thing you want to do is have a cold air vent right where you're going to be putting a big fat piece of furniture.
Defeats the purpose.
Defeats the whole
And
purpose.
another genius thing that you did when you ran those furnaces is a lot of people don't consider where you're running the bulkheads. And you ran them like very nicely along the beam in the center of the room. And like, I don't know if you've ever been in a basement where you're like, what is going on here? There's like weird bulkheads everywhere. You're ducking under things. It is what it is. There's going to be bulkheads in a basement, but if you could plan around it and actually run it cleanly, it'll make it a lot easier. Your drywallers will thank you, and it'll save you money for sure.
Yeah. At the end of the day, if you're dealing with one of these style of houses, you're going to have a center beam. It makes sense to just have a wider bulkhead instead of having multiple bulkheads running throughout the place. It's also significantly cheaper for your HVAC guys to do, and they'll like you a lot more if you plan ahead like that.
Your drywallers will like you a lot more too.
Yeah, your drywallers. Love me! So what we're going to be doing for this room now is we're turning it into a bathroom. Originally, we just had one small bathroom in this basement suite, but now we have enough space for a large bathroom and an ensuite. So we're going to have a vanity over here, we're going to have a toilet over here, and then we're going to have a bathtub. But one thing that I found that makes a big difference is I've learned how to do epoxy surrounds for bathtubs and showers. They look amazing. They're completely waterproof. It's epoxy. And they're super light to install. And they look just awesome because you can make them look like anything. A marble effects, get that Carrara marble. Do granite. Do something that doesn't exist in nature. You can do pinks and purples if you really want to, if that's your thing. No judgment. And having that in there is another way to be able to stand out as either a long-term rental or especially as an Airbnb. Likewise, over here, we're going to have an ensuite. So this one, it's very much a lot smaller. So we're only going to have a stand-up shower in the ensuite, a little pedestal sink, and a toilet there. One challenge we've run into, as you can see, is that the clean out is right here, and then the water main coming in is right here. So essentially, you're going to have a toilet with two tiny little doors on either side, which is going to be a little funny, but you know, whatever. Nobody feels that awkward when they poop, right? So what happened is I used to have a house and we had missionaries in it, like LDS missionaries.
I'm afraid it was the Mormons. Yes, the Mormons were the correct answer.
And at one point there was 9 of them. And on the missionary schedule, they have to shower in the morning. So I would have 9 guys showering in a 1-hour period. So as you can imagine, that blew my hot water tank. And then when my hot water tank was dead, I was realizing that this problem was just going to keep happening. So I talked with my guy. I was going to get on-demand installed. But he actually said to opt for, so you have the one hot water tank that actually does the heating, and it heats up the water. And then the other one that just acts as another one that just keeps it warm. And that's the one where the feed goes out of. And it's really, really effective because you have less burden on your hot water systems. It doesn't have to heat as quickly, all that stuff. But on top of that as well, by having the two, eventually when one of them starts to crap out, you just swap the pipes and now you have it flowing the other way. So you get twice as the lifespan. Obviously you need to still change your anode rods and drain it once a year and crap. But overall it's been awesome. I put them in all my units just because I have big houses, so I just put them in all of them. So this was a little bit of an interesting setup. I used to live in this basement suite because it was the ugliest suite. You know, when you're first starting out, you live in the crappiest place, and then eventually you're like, I deserve better, and I get a better place for myself. But you can see here there's the line where there was a wall. So originally it was bedroom, bedroom, long wall, and then this was literally where the door was to the bathroom. When we were doing the floor plans and we were putting things together, we kind of realized that this hallway, it served no purpose.
You are useless.
Because now we had 2 bathrooms. So originally we were kind of playing with different ideas on how to change it and stuff like that. But then my wife, who's very smart, suggested, why don't we just take out the hallway and just put the door here? And that made a giant bedroom down here. It's so big, and actually instead of doing a king bed and a really fancy ensuite, we're actually gonna be doing 2 queen beds. So we're gonna increase the occupancy of this room. It's gonna be a sacrifice room, but by having 2 queen beds in the room with the ensuite, it's gonna be something that guests are gonna be a lot more comfortable with, and something that's not gonna feel like an encumbrance. You'd be okay with sharing a room when you're traveling if you guys only have to share your bathroom with one other person. So that's what we're doing here. This area here is gonna be the closet. And I think we're going to do the turquoise gemstone color for this. If you don't know what turquoise is, it's my favorite color, and I'm disappointed you don't know. Those are a couple of quick tips that we figured we'd throw out to you guys. There's not a lot that we can talk about. We could talk a little bit more about electrical, but I think we'll just do that in another video. But before we go, we have a surprise that's coming up that we are just literally hashed out as a brainchild just now. So, Chad, why don't you take it away?
Well, we were considering that since we're specifically building out these suites as short-term rentals, be a great opportunity to do a tour of like a fix and flip for the short-term rentals, or a burster. Is like, some people are familiar with the burst strategy and STRs, so thought it would be a cool opportunity to showcase combining the real estate component with the STR business model and doing the renovations and construction to kind of coincide or combine both of those strategies, since we're both in the middle of it right now, making the most of the slow season.
Yeah. So guys, we're planning on it roughly for March 22nd from about 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Chad has 2 flips on the go. You're going to be able to go see that. I'm going to have this one that you're going to be able to walk in and tour both the finished and the unfinished portion. So if you guys are interested,